Wafube, this is Misael Bay, aka Warlock Asylum, with Keenan Booker, aka the God 720, the historian, the legendary author. And today we're going to be on the continuing series of the Kicked Out of Heaven, Volume 2. And we'll be discussing a couple of more features about the werewolf and what did that fully entail. So let me just get set with my lighting here. And I'm going to let Keenan kickstart this off because I know he had a lot to say that we didn't get a chance to touch on last week.
Okay. Well, the dog thing, werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
When I wrote the Real Nigga Etiquette Voodoo Edition, there was a lot of connections with dogs. Actually, the dogs, if you follow through my literature, you'll see that from that werewolf point or the information I dropped and Kicked Out of Heaven, actually showed a chronology lineage of how dogs became part of Western culture when they got here and made had the African American slave trade and the Mexicans and all of that.
Yeah.
Okay? So what I'm talking about is the Spaniard dogs that were used with Christopher Columbus. And these were one of the first war dogs that were used on the outside of Europe, not amongst each other. War dogs were used for a very long time. And these war dogs are symbolized through not only Christopher Columbus, but the cynocephalus. The cynocephalus people are folkloric half man, half dogs that live in the woods, but supposedly they're anthropomorphized and they have human attributes about themselves. Okay. And then you also have Saint Christopher. Saint Christopher, the dog-headed saint, and he is connected with the Christopher Columbus picture that I was drawing. Okay. And that's the whole war dog thing. To be specific, I think it was Hernan Cortez, one of the main Spaniards that went through Mexico, slaughtered a lot of Indians by using war dogs. One of his war dogs were named specifically Amigo. That was the name of the dog, was Amigo, and he was supposedly documented to kill up to 30 Indians in a half an hour.
Wow.
These dogs were bred to hunt down humans, as the whole situation of the Spanish Inquisition. Well, that's not the Spanish Inquisition. This is the Spanish exploration, shall we say. See, they try when you look into through history and you say Spanish Inquisition, a lot of people like to confuse that with the whole Mayan and the Incan situation. That is, I guess, how we understand culture today. Our mind automatically goes there because that's where the word Spanish or Spanish culture has been visualized to the world from the standpoint of Mexico and all of that, not necessarily Spain. So when you say that, so when you say that in today's mind, it's a completely different thing. That's not, the original status to it. You see what I'm saying? So Hernan Cortez went through there with all of that, and that's the Spanish exploration when they went to the Caribbean, found, did all of that. All of that is in the Real Nigga Etiquette. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The cynocephalus that I mentioned could also be,
I was going to show something in Volume 2, one of the pictures that I found. Let me see if I can pull it up to share my screen, or part of it anyway. This picture right here. You see that one? Which is
that's King Lycan. That's from Greece.
Okay. Yes, he's got the
that's where Yeah, the dog face.
The
Yeah.
dog had a thing going on. Yeah, so let me unshare that. But I kind of want to kind of unveil that to give a little bit more of a illustration or a reference point to what you were saying about the dog-headed men and stuff like that. So that's
Yeah, that was King Lycan from Greece, though. That's supposed to be the king of all werewolves.
Mm-hmm.
And that image is the entity from Greece. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Now, another level of the werewolf on the theology level, when you want to talk about its representation in witchcraft versus the Christian religion, you see the sheep. That's why Jesus calls his flock sheep. But then you also got to watch that because the ewes and the sheep, and there's also a ewe tribe in Africa. And I talked about this in the Real Nigga Etiquette Voodoo edition. I had to go over the ewes, and there's also a Saint ewe, and that's the EWE, which is the genus name for sheep. And I also just found out that sheep have a high favoritism of homosexual activity as an animal.
Oh, wow.
So, and that would also align with Christianity being a cuckold religion. But the terminology of Jesus using being a shepherd over sheep, that would make his enemy the wolf, as the wolf eats sheep. So that's why it's the wolf of Wall Street. You see? So basically you're saying, right. You're saying basically the devil of hell, basically. You're saying Wolf of Wall Street. First, if you want to look at it in a theological context. You see what I'm saying? There's for it to be witchcraft. You see, people are just using that word witchcraft, occultism, arcane, or whatever word you want to use to classify the dark arts. People fail to realize that it is the reverse of religion. It is a system that is designed as reverse of religion. So that's why we use the term jackass, or for you to say the word dead ass. For you, like in New York, they say dead ass a lot, right? Like dead ass this and dead ass that. Right. That term dead ass, you're actually saying dead Jesus. And didn't even know that, because the ass is the donkey, and the donkey is what Jesus rode on Good Friday. And the donkey is not a witchcraft animal. You'll never find the donkey inside the witchcraft realm. You'll find the owl, you'll find the goat, you'll find the other entities. You won't even really find the bull. The bull is a mediocre piece. So he's like neutral. Yeah, the bull is neutral. The deer is Jesus, and the goat is the devil. The reason the goat is the devil, Capricorn, has a whole another science behind that. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes back to this whole werewolf thing, that's what that entity represents. So there are paintings in the medieval times of Jesus fighting with the werewolf, and the werewolf snatching food from Jesus, or just snatching stuff from Jesus. There's a couple of paintings like that.
I see.
Right.
Wow.
Because you have to understand, in order to make an entity alive, like we're talking about a psychological space. That's what we're describing when we're talking about werewolves, right? We put a lot of rules and litigations which are similar to the everyday character structure of human pertaining to communication and living a life. So the werewolf will have to have a she-wolf, because that is man and woman, that's union. We're going to put up a painting of wolves playing dice. The wolf is a gentleman. The wolf is all of these different layers and forms to make it a live entity in essence of energy. You see what I'm showing you? So, the energy is so real with me. After I wrote Volume 2, I can't even grow hair. If I grow hair at a certain length, I'll have to check myself, because I'll be snapping at people, and I'll be, rah. I don't know what it is. I guess now that I know that information is.
Yeah, just kind of.
And then that's awesome.
Go ahead. Does that, speaking about that, have you noticed that from that time, the medieval era, did the werewolf paradigm influence fashion? Did it influence fashion or hairstyles, or do you see some of that in today's
hairstyles? No, I wouldn't say. If we were talking about hairstyles, like you want to talk about mohawk, I would say the mohawk was probably more of a razorback hog, more so than a werewolf. You see.
Okay.
Werewolf inside fashion. That's a good one. It's there. I would tell you that. And just like the effects of the plague being inside the sounds of music, it's there. I would be able to pick it out. But yeah, well, the paws, I've seen people use, little paw gloves and things like that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that is definitely, well, that could be vampire or werewolf. The fangs, people are getting fangs on the teeth.
I think the eyes, the contacts with the eyes and stuff like that is also another connection people are doing. I imagine the styles influence. I was thinking more of like some of the long hairstyles that people try to emulate over the past.
I think the long hairstyle was definitely a vampire thing, and that was like I said once again, a bounce off of the Jesus entity. And that would be more so our modern day Count Dracula. The first Count Dracula didn't have long hair, but if we look at the role that Eddie Murphy played with Blackula, he had long hair. And then Michael Jackson did Thriller, and that was the werewolf. That was the undead.
Yeah.
That was the undead and the werewolf. So
that whole production was interesting, to say the least. That was an interesting production. So I can kind of see resemblances of it. I just asked because when you mentioned that about cutting your hair and stuff, I was like, man, I wonder if there's some sort of like things that may have went on from that lure, people trying to, get on the bandwagon, or maybe like after 100 years, it was,
Well, I can say this. This is what I can say. And it is indirectly connected to the werewolf, but it's not. What it's really connected to is the wild man that I talk about in volume 2. Okay. And the wild man, if you go through medieval paintings, you'll see the wild man has hair all over his body. Now, and all over his head, same with the wild woman. Now, who is the wild man and the wild woman of today? The wild man and the wild woman of today would be your AC/DC, your Leonard Skinner of the 80s. Okay. They have wild long hair. Same with your wrestlers. They had long hair. Right. And these are white males of 30, 40 years of age, long hair, and doing the arcane art. Now, when we have the judge, when we have the lawyer, they don't have this wild hair, do they?
No.
So, it is definitely a throwback in the human intelligence that unkept hair as an animal cannot groom itself, not to the extent of what a human can do by barber. And that's probably why we take barbering so important inside Western society, because it is a divider line of animal and human.
I see.
To groom. So due to the fact that where we can groom, we keep that in that realm of production, industry, engineering. That's why you can't be in those realms with wild hair. Now, if you're doing the arcane, jumping up on the stage, and you're being the jester or the joker, and you're here to entertain, you could be of any status that you would like to be, because that is your goal.
Gotcha.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, it's nuts, some of the things that go on in society, and just what they're derived from. It wouldn't surprise me, because I guess that some people reach certain depths of psychology, whether for the ill or the beneficial. Other people may tap into it, but not as much. Maybe it exercises itself as fashion. Maybe it's attitude. Maybe in music. You know what I'm saying? But I think that some of those figures, as far as like the werewolf, the vampire, definitely could also reflect in some ways the, at least in part, the consciousness of the community at the time that these things came to surface. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like that will be going on. What else is there specifically about the werewolf myth? There were some other notes I had up that you found intriguing. Let me see if I could pull this. Hold on a second.
Yeah, pull it up.
Yeah, so I can get more into an exact.
Once I understood the concept of the ravaging and what that really was, you know, I mean, they called the October 1st massacre that happened here in Las Vegas. They kept on referring to that dude as a lone wolf.
Oh wow, wow.
And yeah, there's a wolf painted on the side of the Plaza Hotel, right on the exit. You get around here. Once I understood what really a wolf was and what ravaging really was, and you have to understand that, you know, we're looking at it as ravaging, you know, is violent, you know. In the animal realm, there is no sustenance, there is no nourishment without ravaging. You know, and if you want to get down to the detail of human, there is no nourishment without ravaging.
Wow.
Right, because, and let me show you. You put you cut your steak on your fork and you put it in some A1 sauce, and then you eat it, right? And this is your ravaging, because the motion of your teeth grinding against the muscles of that steak is a violent act, brother.
Yeah, definitely.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So either way it goes, for you to chew as that being a ravaging and violent expression, you can never get away from ravaging. It doesn't matter how weak or soft, want to play, be in a wheelchair, whatever the case, or, you know, you want to play the game with the hermit, you know. So ravaging is part of your, you know, being.
Yeah. There is one aspect I had saw in here. There was a couple, actually. I think I even saw a couple more photos. But let me share my screen right quick a second. I'll read it out because you may not catch it because we're in a split screen mode. Let me see right here. It mentions that among other werewolf cases, the story of a tailor stands out for its peculiarity. The alleged werewolf would hide in the forest for a passerby. Whenever he could get a chance, he jumped out and killed the unsuspecting person. He had a shop and used it as a bait for children. He would tempt them into his shop and kill them in his cellars. He stored body parts and bones in barrels. The records accumulated during his trial were so repulsive that the court decided to destroy them. Yeah, that's pretty deep. I often wonder why in these like strange attempts of murder and mayhem, or just even in the fables and legends, that is, a lot of times we hear about children being targeted. You know what I'm saying? You know, like
why? There's a lot of stuff going on with the children stuff, and unfortunately, there is a zone of that with the ravaging of the werewolf. Both on both sides, on you know, actual murder, and then the whole element of rape is underneath. Right, rape is underneath the werewolf. Okay, seduction is underneath. Seduction and manipulation is underneath.
I see.
The vampire. You're right. Count Dracula. You see. Right. Now, it's not necessarily, okay, we're going in for the rape. All right. It is in the space of the animal act. And, you know, when women are in the space of animal act, and it is permissive for man to be in the mind of animal during the course of, you know, copulation, you see. So the true level of the werewolf and the sexual side of extreme ravaging, which has very high level hellish elements, does involve children, it involves incest, it involves indiscriminate arts of the dark side, basically. And, you know, this is the only space where you can express or feel free. Freedom is to be bound by no law, you know, and that is what you see, and that is how the animal kingdom is designed. There's no law. So that element is there, and I don't want to be descriptive because it gets very, you know, out of place. But the werewolf, you know, does have that. There's the devouring of children, which and the chase of children that you find throughout many folklore stories and mythology stories, specifically from Greece, Rome, old Europe. You know, you start out with Kronos. Kronos ate his children, and they had to get ripped out of his stomach. So the thing is about when you want to go deep to mankind, but that's all there was on this planet at one time. You know, was the devouring of babies, the raping of children, such and such. You know,
Yeah,
this was, huh?
No, because people, you know, and I never really thought about it until I just saw that quote, and then I know of other fairy tales, some famous even, that you have certain descriptions of things described, and it's like, man, why would someone recite this as a children's story? You know what I mean? Like the other day, I had known what this meant just from my own studies, but you know, like you read in like Red Riding Hood or one of these books or whatever, and the woman, I forget the name of it, no, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And then she's lying in a casket until someone comes and kisses her and
Oh, that's
wakes her.
Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sleeping Beauty, Sleeping Beauty.
Sleeping Beauty. And I'm like, yo,
Yeah.
this is wild, man.
Yeah.
Who would say this to a kid? Like someone's in a casket and you kiss them. Like that's
Oh
necrophilia.
yeah, that's a little necrophilia right there.
Yeah, yeah.
But the whole thing is well, Cinderella is a story that is composed of over 360 different stories.
Oh wow. Wow.
Right. So you have to understand that those fairy tale stories are specifically designed for certain psychological responses and behavior installments from those stories. And you know, when it goes back to the whole children thing, there's a lot of layers here. You know, one of them is survival of the fittest. You know, and divine intervention. So if everybody's over here hunting babies, you're the one that didn't get caught, then you obviously must be destined by God.
Yeah.
Have some stroke of divinity amongst you. Now, you also have to understand that there's no babies born inside Garden of Eden. So, right. So, as soon as you have a child, you've opened up the gates of hell, basically.
So that's what's the ancient belief then. Or actually
Well,
the literal
yeah,
belief.
well, I mean, that is the facts in reality, because what happens is when you have a baby, what's the first thing you do? You're going to attract more witches. So all the women coming around with the tits talking about, so what happened with her baby here, what happened with their baby there, and Then you're going to have the baby. The giving birth of the baby hurts the woman, right? She's in pain and agony and crying and screaming. And then the baby gets born. The first thing we do with the baby is he has to have the shots. He has to have the circumcision, and then we smack him on the ass for the christening to wake up and have them get the snot out the nose. Okay, and then we throw you underneath the baking light and we put you in the.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So and then not only that, I got to smack you around for anything that you might grab and think you can throw and grow. I mean, throw and break. I gotta smack you around to learn to teach you your ABCs and your 1, 2, 3s and what not to do. I gotta make you socially sound. So in order to make you socially sound, I have to implicate violence. This violence that you're going to experience in order to be cooperative with society is also going to put you in a space to go out here and inflict pain upon others. And you also may go into a space where you desire for pain to be inflicted upon you. So if we're dealing with a pain exchange, dealing with your engagement with other people, then and that is the bottom line basis of it. Then where are we at? What location are we in?
Yeah.
And we see what type of gate we've opened just by having a child. It is great chaos, right? You have done order out of chaos.
Yeah.
When you have a child.
And I think that time too, there was a lot of stillbirths, and sometimes there was a lot of fatalities on the mother's end. So it's really, I can understand why people felt a certain way about it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, there's also baby screams. At that time, there wasn't a lot of medical intelligence that was, there was a lot of, let me say that, let me take that back. There was a lot of medical intelligence, but not as detailed as we can so-called get today on, Western society. I don't really agree with their medical practices, but it is definitely true that their diagnostic system is sound. You see what I'm saying? The healing process may not be sound. But the diagnostic most definitely is, So we didn't have that back then. Babies could have been crying and cry all night, and you get upset if you don't have self-control. You don't have a strong mental, and the only thing that's going to make your mental strong is literature and experience. So, she'll walk up in there and take that baby by the leg and chuck it at the wall, chuck it in the chimney.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
Throw it in the river. Yeah, feed it to a wolf.
It's tough. That stuff is wild, man. But the werewolf. One other question that I did have, because I know we're going to be going into the vampire in another episode. Sorry, but one question I did have was, were there any edicts or sorts of affirmations or confirmations of such cases by government officials and royalty? Because a lot of times I see this stuff documented more from the historical perspective, which occurred at the time. But also, I was kind of wondering, were there any, and I think you might have touched on this in a previous show when we were talking about the castles and what was used to protect them. But was there any sort of confirmation by ruling officials?
Yeah, there was one case where we got a real thin line here, okay? And this thin line is the line in between falsehood and reality. Was it all, very real? And there's a story here where a wolf was brought in front of a king. Brought to the king. And when the wolf came to the king asked the wolf to, stop its acts, and he held out his hand, and the wolf put his paw in his hand, and they made an agreement that the wolf will not attack people, and as long as the people feed the wolf,
Wow.
So, and like I was telling you earlier, that is the alchemy of anthropomorphism, and that's bringing it into essence of life. in energy. So,
Okay.
right. So that little one story compiles to the caricature
Mm-hmm.
of the werewolf that we still see today. But we don't know those stories are embedded in that character. We just see some
Yeah.
ravaging animal on the movie screen. You see what I'm saying?
Gotcha. Wow, that's some pretty heavy stuff with the werewolf, man. You know,
Yeah.
but I guess you have so many different levels on that subject because you have people who really exhibit that ultimately on the mental, psychological level. Some people may resemble that on the physical level as far as like disease or maybe just hygiene or and still also have the psychological imprint of the werewolf. So it's definitely something that's like, wow. Where do you see this subject in the future?
Um. Um. The werewolf is running about freely in the land right now.
Mm-hmm.
In the future,
Mm-hmm.
sheesh. I mean, it's a psychological status. It's not a real lycanthropy capability.
Right,
You know,
right.
even though I do have a case that's on kickedoutofheaven.com, if you
Mm-hmm.
scroll through there, I do have some news articles of the lycanthropy event
Mm-hmm.
occurring, and it was showed on the news that an individual fell into the space of operating like a dog and attacked some humans.
Mm.
Right. He
Wow.
saw himself as a dog, and then because of his activities of acting like a quadruped, the other individuals saw him also as a dog, but not in the essence of transformation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even though the individual was walking on all fours and acting like the dog.
Yeah, I heard of cases where human young have been raised by animals, wolves, and things of that nature, and then get to a certain degree where they think that they're that animal. You know what I'm saying? Growing up under that, they don't know any better. I think there was actually, I remember, and I'm
There was a
pretty sure,
recent case to that. Yeah, I think
yeah,
there was a
yeah,
recent case in India or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was somewhere around, I believe, in the late '60s or '70s, and they discovered this guy. I think I had a book on it, as a young child, but it was fascinating. And I think they did a couple of movies on it, saying at one point in time. But it's interesting because of how those animals related to him. Not only what he was doing, but how those animals related to him as one of their pack or whatever. It's just wow, it's amazing. But he was able to survive. I mean, that's maybe if he was left unattended as a baby, he might not have been around. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was a pretty intense. That's the only example that I know of personally outside of criminal activity that could fit into that paradigm um in this modern era, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think there was a more recent case of a girl who was
Mhm.
raised by some wolves in India somewhere,
Mhm.
and she was crouched on all fours and the whole thing.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
um, it can happen.
Yeah.
Our modern day status of wolf is exactly what you saw, Wolf of Wall Street. Because
Mhm.
everybody has to be a wolf about money right now. If they're not, then
Yeah.
if you don't have your wolf on by 1,000% right now, I feel sorry for you.
Yeah.
I'm talking about when you go outside, every corner you look, everywhere you turn, all of that. Like,
Mhm.
money right now, you have to be a ravager,
Yeah.
because it's all for security. We don't know what's coming next.
Yeah.
We don't even know the potentiality rate of what's going to come next.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, what's coming next, like you said.
Yeah, or what's coming next.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's a crazy situation. Everybody's on edge. And a lot of people are trying to pump an illusion like the edge ain't here and we ain't on edge and they still living life. It's just crazy stuff.
Do you think that that would induce some, like, there were certain things that were written in volume 2 concerning the werewolf. I don't know how to track them down right now, but I just got an idea. It wasn't said more or less directly, but getting the idea that, you know, during the medieval times, there were a lot of things to push humanity on the boundary of sanity, you know, as far as plague and different things that
Yeah,
the stuff is
right.
concerned. Do you think that a similar response, just even on a psychological level, will increase the appearance of people who have this psychology based on the times that we're living in?
Increase the appearance?
Yeah. So in other words, like, you know, like you mentioned, some people are just living life, and, you know, humanity is on the edge. I mean, you know, definitely this year distinctly. I don't know. I never really lived through I wasn't around during the Spanish influenza, obviously, but I remember seeing something, you know, where, you know, the death call is getting this huge. You know what I'm saying? You know, as far as that's concerned, you know, you watch a movie, you know, this dude, he's in his light, and then, you know, a year and a half later, he's out of here. You know what I'm saying? Um, so it's kind of interesting. I don't know. You know.
Well, it's like I was talking to a friend today, Haitian in New York.
Mm,
He said he knows a lot of people that died, and he knows people that know a lot of people that died. But everybody died in the hospital.
hmm
Nobody fell out on the streets. Nobody,
Yeah, it's
fell
not
asleep
that
behind
type
the
of.
wheel.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
that
no,
type
but
of
that's
world.
what I'm telling you. A
hmm
real plague, that's what you would see.
hmm
You would have seen somebody just, throw up in the middle of the grocery store and fall out dead right there.
Yeah, but
You would have seen some type of activity like that.
yeah, that I understand. But I know, like, one thing to consider is also the generation, because, you know, we live in a generation now. This generation coming up, I think, well, even before this present generation, you know, you get down in the single digits of the 2000 years, people wearing pajamas outside, you know, just real, like, kid stuff, and a lot of them are not really, you know, haven't really faced any blunt, hard realities,
Right.
and
They've been born in a Chuck E. Cheese world
yeah,
where everything is just provided and everything is just poison on
yeah,
top of poison.
yeah,
They think there's a hot dog bush out here.
yeah, yeah. And so I imagine,
Mhm.
you know, as time goes on, um, I think in this present time, of course, the human need is always going to survive, but I do believe that the scale of economics is shifting, and that some nations that were heavily empowered might not be, and other nations are rising up that are going to replace those that were once former. Now, depending on the election, we can be in the stage of war, or, you know, we can continue on. This thing can happen without war. There's these economic uh, caste systems for the nations. You know what I'm saying? Some nations will rise to the fore. I believe in some will fall to the back. I personally think if we have a change in administration, other nations will be walking on American soil. I definitely feel that way. You know what I'm saying? Because it's no, like, Trump. There's you know, you know, there's a lot there that could be desired. You know what I'm saying? Biden, his whole ticket is getting somebody out of office. We don't know what his agenda is, and we don't even know if the dude is cognizant to stay in presidency for 4 years. And if he is replaced, we're dealing with someone who wasn't even in Congress that long. You know what I'm saying? And all of this goes back to picking people based on some celebrityhood without looking at their real policies. You know what I'm saying? You know, this dude wrote the crime bill in 1994 this lady watched 130 black and brown men go into prison, blocked evidence that could have gotten people off of death row who were wrongly accused. And a lot of people think that this is progress.
Well,
Yeah. You
I
know,
mean, I don't know, bro. If this nation goes to a woman's hands, man, you can forget about it, bro.
and I just think that,
They don't got no werewolf in them like that. They can't,
and
Trump
it,
at least got some werewolf, huh?
and she's just not prepared for that office right now. When she was running, I kind of thought that, she was gonna probably run to get her name out there, and then after the next term, she was really gonna run because Trump had donated to her
Bro,
cause. You know what
let
I'm
me
saying?
tell you something. Let me tell you something, bro. The white man knows what he's doing.
Oh
Okay?
yeah, definitely.
And
Yeah,
let me tell you
definitely.
something. There's a reason why women do not rule. And women cannot rule.
Mm-hmm.
You wanna know why?
What's that?
Because they ovulate.
Mm-hmm.
They have menopause too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And guess what ovulation does?
What's that?
Ovulation alters their chemical structure, which alters their decision making every 2 weeks.
Mm.
So within a month, a woman is actually maybe 2, maybe even 3 different people because of her decision making structure
Mm-hmm.
that is based off of her ovulation,
Mm-hmm.
which also, when we sprinkle in smells, sprinkle in food, sprinkle in social influence,
Mm-hmm.
girlfriend's influence, the fucking activity from the radiation on the phone, we're dealing with the concoction, brother, bad decision making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if we talk about Kamala, we talk about Queen Elizabeth, it doesn't matter which one we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Every 2 to 3 weeks, she's going to ovulate. When she ovulates, she's going to make different decisions, okay? And then what she would when she wasn't ovulating. And these decision makers this decision making doesn't have to be based on any type of sexual activity.
Mm-hmm.
Her overall decision making is switched up.
Yeah.
And that's why. So when you're looking at Nancy Pelosi, or when you're looking at Kamala Harris, whatever the fuck, you're looking at a 50-year-old woman that's going through menopause,
Mm-hmm.
decision making is shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, her decision making is shot. This is biology. You understand? This is something you cannot change.
Yeah. Well, she came, man.
So that's why when America was strong, 1900s, 1800s, America was strong. Who was up in there? Only males. We had production, we had growth, we had invention, instruction, we had engineering. All of that was going down. Okay? Now that we got fucking 50 different fast food restaurants in one city, a broad feel like she can run a fucking mouth because everything is already built up. Everything is already industrially prepared. But she fails to realize that her single motherness has not raised the children to maintain the society that was built. Because guess what? All right, women don't know anything about maintenance. Okay? They are ready for the preparation. See, a woman she's the only meat that dresses herself for slaughter, as they would say in the medieval times.
Wow.
She's the only meat that dresses herself for slaughter.
Wow.
Get that. Right. So what happens is they get all pretty, they get all dressed up. That is the beginning. Does she have a plan for where she's supposed to be at by the end of the night? No. Exactly. The man is like already thinking at the end of the night, she should be here, huffing and puffing and panting and sweaty and in my home. Okay, that's man has the plan for the beginning, for the end. The woman is trying to plan shit at the beginning. Women don't have a psychology that premeditates the end point. They're not goal seekers. So if you're not a goal seeker, you can't get to the end point. So for instance, you want to go out. She wants to go out to eat. What's the end game when you go out to eat? Nothing. You wasted. Now you got to shit. That's all that was gained was shit. You shitted. That was the end result of a night to eat. You go out to the movies. What's gained at the end? There's no guaranteed gain when you do what right. Women's psyches are built on guaranteed gains, and here's why. Because the end result is usually their pregnancy. So they have to stay away from end results at all times. And they have to worry about make the beginning look real good, and then they got to carry out the middle space. They got to drag out.
Wow.
They don't want the end, right? So that's why you got this story about Athena, or you got this story about Zeus, or you got the story about Hercules, which mythology, I believe, is really ancient throwbacks of mothers, shutting up the infant, telling her just a bunch of blowing up the head. Now, on the Carl Jung level, there is a level of psychology and stereotype pictures that are mirroring the activities of the culture. You understand what I'm saying? But in essence, mythology is based on beautiful big god or beautiful big goddess, and we put all of these attributes around the goddess, and then we carry out these stories, and there's no endpoint.
I see.
You see? Yeah. And that's what it is. Just like the way they did the Bible for 200, 300 years in America. They preach about it in a standpoint where there's no endpoint. Even though there's only 400, 500 pages to the book, 300 pages. You see? There is an endpoint, but they taught it in a format where there is no endpoint.
I see.
Right. That's female thinking, to not have an endpoint. Pictures with your camera. Blah, blah, blah. No endpoint. Just take pictures all goddamn day.
Yeah.
A like. I want to get a million likes. No endpoint on that.
Yeah, a lot of appearance on that, man. So we're going to come back next week. We're going to build with the vampire. And, man, it's been a very insightful episode once again on the werewolf and this anthology of an anthology. It's been really a blessing to speak with the brother. And you got any final words, Keon?
Get the Kicked Out of Heaven. You need to get it right now. All 3 volumes for $100. They're going. It's hot. You need to get it right now. It's the only survival manual for the plague. You understand how to survive off the land, how to get yourself prepared for the darkest elements that could appear in society currently.
Yeah.
Because of a lot of the shit that we're seeing, new ways of, shall I say, cunningness or deception and things of that nature. You will get taught a lot of magic arts, basically, in the Kicked Out of Heaven. I'm going to be reading it. We're going to be going over it. So, yeah, get that. Go to kickedoutofheaven.com as well. StargatePublishing.com, KeenanBooker.com.
All right. So this is Misal Bay, a.k.a. Warlock Asylum, with Keenan Booker, the God 720. And we're going to say good night and have a blessed evening. See you shortly.